Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio. I am your host, Royce White, and I am here at Free People Radio in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. The day is February 27th, the year of our Lord 2023, and this is episode 10, episode number 10. First, I want to say thank you to all the new subscribers, all of the new fans and listeners of the podcast. We are up and available on all major platforms, that being YouTube, Rumble. We have episodes backed up on BitChute. We are working on Twitch this week as another backup platform. I've heard that Odyssey is another platform we should look into to back up our content, so we will be doing that. As far as all of the audio platforms, we are on all audio platforms as of now, all the major audio platforms as of now: Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Also want to give a special shout out to the War Room Posse, Mo Bannon and Grace Chong and Steve Bannon for streaming the podcast over there on Getter, on the War Room Getter page. That's been a major help, and we are appreciative and thankful of that. I believe, can't confirm yet, but I believe someone from the War Room Posse may be joining us in the weeks to come for a family and friends guest episode. So I'll keep you posted on that and updated as that develops. No other housekeeping. We're getting into it. Episode 10. I need all 90 minutes or so to get through this. Today, we have to go back in the early stages in order to build this conversation the right way, in order to build this community the right way, and hopefully, potentially, this movement. We have to go back and address something fundamental. Now, I started off talking about globalism and the uniparty and the deep state of the corporatocracy. I use the NBA as an example of how the deep state works. I've talked about the intelligence community, and it's been hyper political. Not hide my Christian worldview at all. And if you didn't get a chance, you should go back and listen to last Friday's Family and Friends guest episode with the great A.J. Barker. I thought he laid out an incredible and introspective story and look into his Catholic conversion from atheism, one that was very, very insightful, very profound, and authentic and genuine. So if you didn't get a chance to see last Friday's episode, you should definitely go do that today, as well as go subscribe to Professor Penn's podcast. It's a great podcast. He's an incredible speaker and orator, and is a wealth of knowledge and has an education in a vast variety of topics. So go scroll down on my YouTube channel if you get the chance and subscribe to the Professor Penn podcast. So I'm not hiding the Christian worldview, and we'll always dive back into the Christian worldview as the podcast develops and as the conversation develops. We'll need that more than anything. In fact, it's the most essential thing we need, in my opinion, and any suggestion otherwise will fail in the end. But I want to dive into something very specific today, and that is, you could argue, the oldest fight that exists for humanity, the fundamental friction that exists for humanity at bottom, and that is man and woman, the battle between men and women. In order to do that, I want to start by saying I am not attempting to drive a greater wedge between men and women, but what I do believe is that men and women cannot create a stable community, a stable state, stable nation, stable culture under false auspices, under false premise. And that has become much of what the prevailing relationship between men and women, culturally, philosophically, politically, has been. And I want to go back to one of the inflection points, or one of the flash points, or turning points of this dynamic. And the reason why is because it is the driving force of the way that our world is organized today. I mean, it really is. And that's not an exaggeration. We can talk about race, we can talk about gender politics and identity politics as a whole, but really there's an axiomatic dynamic between men and women that's unresolved, and may always be unresolved, but it's still worth discussing, talking about, and identifying. But that unresolved dynamic is the central vein of the way our society is organized today, and I want to dive down into that. And in order to do that, I pulled up a video. I just tweeted earlier today. I pulled up a video of the great Steve Bannon in an unreleased interview, behind the scenes interview with Jeffrey Epstein. And in this interview, it was just a little sound bite. And it's just fascinating to me. And I want to play this clip for you to set the stage for the conversation that we're going to have, so that you can understand you know, um, my impulse to dive into this now, this early in the podcast, to get this out of the way, not out of the way, but introduce this and start to tackle this. And again, I want to reiterate, I know we have many women listeners, many female listeners, many female fans. I've seen them. They've been there my entire time on the public stage, and they're some of my most avid supporters. And we don't want to alienate them, but we also don't want women to be in the movement under false pretenses or false premise. We want the conversation to be clear and concise, and the understanding to be there, and the fundamentals to be worked out, so that we can so that we can build a formidable alliance in all of the things that we need to fight, and all of the places we need to go and walk together. Ultimately, God did create man and woman together, and there is great power and need for our alliance, but under the right premise and under the right pretenses. So we're not trying to alienate anyone, but and to be honest, this conversation may get a little difficult for some of our women listeners, and even some of our male listeners, or whoever. This conversation today may get a little difficult, and that's fine. And I invite you to comment below and with any interjections or disagreements that you have. And I'm doing my best to look at all the feedback. So far, it's all been stellar. I know that won't always be the case. As the podcast grows, detractors will grow with it, and will at some point, hopefully, be unable to look at all of the what do you call it, negative feedback or criticism. Or just criticism. At some point, I won't be able to do it, and I pray for that day to come. Hopefully, we can develop a conversation that big. But I want to play this video for you to start the podcast, and then we'll get into it from there. This is Jeffrey Epstein being interviewed by the great Steve Bannon.
I made my living from old thinking, but the future is for the way women think.
The way women think.
That's correct.
Is that not a sop because of all the depravity you've done against young women, and your new sop is that their women's thinking is the future?
No, I've always believed that women would be, in fact, be able to take over. I'm a firm believer and supporter of Time's Up.
Stop. It's about a 23-second clip, and it's a sneak peek of this unreleased documentary where the great Steve Bannon has interviewed Jeffrey Epstein before his death. Number one, it's rare to even see Jeffrey Epstein in an interview. Would you agree with that, Patrick? I mean, he's a unicorn-like a figure when it comes to being interviewed or any real video, hearing him speak and talk. Jeffrey Epstein is a spooky character. He definitely was involved in some security state espionage type of deal, in my opinion, possibly working for Mossad, possibly working for the CIA. In many cases, when you work with Mossad or you work with the CIA, there tends to be some type of crossover there. Especially, I mean, he was American asset if he was working for any of those security agencies, and the Five Eyes as well, and so on and so forth. And in this story, and hopefully at some point in the future, we will have the great Alex Jones on to talk more about this Jeffrey Epstein situation and many more situations like it that have been deemed conspiracy theories, but obviously hold great weight, great truth, and great significance of big government and global organizational corruption and conspiracy. We don't know when that'll be. Alex has already just sent me a text and said, "Hey, whenever you're ready, I want to be on the podcast." We're trying to be careful on when we bring Alex on, because we know that big tech will likely censor the episode, and they may in fact censor my entire channel or pull it down for even interviewing Alex. So we're trying to gauge when that would be appropriate. But Alex Jones was one of the early whistleblowers, one of the early people who sounded the alarm around Jeffrey Epstein and all of the child pedophilia and sex trafficking that was going on in that whole little circle of people. But this is an interesting clip, right? And all of that stuff aside, I'm just giving you more housekeeping on the fly here. But all of that stuff aside, you see that Jeffrey Epstein openly professes to be a huge advocate of the Time's Up movement. This is not by accident, ladies and gentlemen. This is coordinated. This is in line with exactly what I want to lay out today. And I've done it. If you watch me on Fearless, this will sound like somewhat of a repeat, but I want to do an even deeper dive so that you can understand where this stems from. I've already said that there were four heresies of the West: the scientific method, democracy, computer technology, and fourth will be artificial intelligence, or has become artificial intelligence. But they coincide with the four horsemen of the apocalypse, these four ideological horsemen of the apocalypse, starting with secularism, moving to liberalism, communism, and now globalism. And all four line up with those heresies directly. Now, these ideologies are being played out and used and puppeted in different places around the world strategically to advance one end goal, which is tyranny, global governance, corruption, and a sort of anti-God prevailing spirit, culture, and state. And that becomes clear because no matter what side of the political aisle you fall on, you tend to see a coalescing of anti-God sentiment with those who oppose what we would call America first, or nationalists, or people who believe in God. There's a genuine holy war still being played out. Now it's spread and it has all of these different little factions. But when you get back down to the root, it's anti-God. It's a rejection of God. And many of them are very open and blatant in saying that. But let's understand that within this four horsemen of the apocalypse, where Marxism played a role, where communism played a very specific role. And I'm not here to be an alarmist. Communism. That's how we set the foreign policy that we did against Russia. That's how we got into the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's why the FBI decided that they need to surveil and eventually probably, or in some way, aid in the assassination of Malcolm X and others like Fred Hampton and many of the Black Panthers who had a more socialist bent, but were ultimately more nationalist and even ethno-nationalist, you could say. But so the scare around communism, the fear of communism, set a stage for the war path that we're now on with Russia, the other nuclear superpower in the world. So I'm not here to be a communism alarmist, and I'm not sure how prevalent the communist mindset or political worldview is in Russia today. There are some people who believe that this sort of proto-nationalist and Christian-based messaging from the Kremlin and from Vladimir Putin and them and those guys there in Russia is an act, that all of it is a way to cover up their communism. I don't necessarily believe that. I think that Russia is a multivaried, multiple ideology country, the same way America is, especially within the government. And in the American government, you have people who probably believe in God and are Christian. You have people who are anti-God and communist, and we have to be willing to accept that duality, that multivaried possibility. If we don't, we've handicapped ourselves in looking at these issues. So it's possible that there's a prevailing communist ideological sentiment coming out of Russia there, and that all of their, anti-LGBTQ, anti-globalism, anti-this, anti-that is a way to cover for if they eventually took a different role or position in the power dynamic on the world stage, that they would then bring forth the communism that lays underneath. I don't necessarily believe that, but it's a theory that's out there. However, on the flip side of things, we built a foreign policy that was based on fighting against communism. Right after World War II, obviously, the communist threat grew during World War II, and the Western powers or the Allied forces were aware of this communist, worldview during World War II, but they felt that the Axis powers were more dangerous. And there are some that would argue that Hitler himself went into Russia to fight against communism. And maybe he did, Maybe he felt communism was a genuine threat. Maybe he used it for his own selfish ambitions. We're dealing with dualities here. And this is why the show is partly why it's called, why the show is named Please Call Me Crazy, because to even imagine or venture down both paths in your thinking takes a level of courage that some would deem crazy, and that's okay, but we're here to do that. So we don't know what people's motives were. We can look at their results and we can go back and infer the motive with some utility. Now I say that because the Allied forces said, hey, communism is the next threat. And so we enter a Cold War with Russia, and so on and so forth. Now, somewhere between then and now, communism or by way of Marxism has become the prevailing ideological and philosophical political framework of our universities. It's not an argument. That's not a conspiracy theory. 75 to 80% of college professors identify as Marxists. So this isn't a conspiracy theory. And those who don't, socialism, communism, Marxism, we have a predominant left-leaning, progressive, socialist, communist, Marxist political ideology in this country. In the West, even, you could say. And it's so strange because right now we see all of these Western leftist institutions lining up against a country that we initially lined up against due to their communism, due to Stalin and the dangers of communism. And now the shoes have been reversed in many ways. The Russians are saying we want to be nationalists. We believe in an identity. We believe in capitalism. We believe in all of these different things that, would be considered more traditional Western values. And now the West is opting for Marxism and communism. So I'm going to continue to do my research and try and pinpoint and identify when this major shift happened. Now, there are some out there who I tend to agree with that the prevalence of communism and Marxism was already on Western soil and in America, and that the institution of the Federal Reserve was the first attempt of the Marxists to take over the West or take over this country. And then it happened again with the Civil Rights Movement. And then after the Civil Rights Movement, after the Civil Rights Movement didn't give the Marxists and communists the foothold that they want, the footing that they wanted, they decided to then go into the universities full tilt and just completely take the society through the universities. And in many ways, they've succeeded at that, and we should be cautious of it. And that brings me to my conversation today, because you have to go back and understand what Marxism is, first off, who was behind it, and what it's led to. And I know this first 15 minutes was a mouthful, and I just sped through a lot of that, but I want to get granular now. Karl Marx was an anti-Jew. Okay, he was a Jewish man, white Jewish man, German Jewish philosopher. There in the late 1800s came into prominence, and then throughout the early part of the 1900s, and he wrote the Communist Manifesto. So, communism was around loosely. There are times and places where people say that communism existed, but Karl Marx is by far the progenitor or philosophical leader of communist thought and of the underlying Marxist ideology. And so he wrote the Communist Manifesto, and what Marx and what Marxist or Marxism presents itself as is a remedy to the unequal distribution of wealth and resources. At bottom, that's what they're trying to promote themselves as. There's this unequal distribution of wealth, and money, and power, and resources that always crops up in any organized society or civilization or country, or city, town, whatever. It always pops up. And the only way to remedy that is to become communist. That's what they're really saying. And in doing so, well, number one, from the very start, it's a double cross and triple cross. And you got to know that, because it was secular and it was anti-God. And when you come from a time period where people were more faithful, you can't introduce a philosophy and just come out and say, hey, we're anti-God. I mean, that doesn't go over well with the people in the town square, right? So in the late 1800s in Europe and throughout the 1900s, even here in America, people still had a profound sense of Christian and religious and faith-based identity. Karl Marx had to navigate that reality. So in order to do that, he went to the most bottom materialist motif that he could call on and use to gain support. And in doing so, the anti-God philosophy would then sort of fester or seep in, and people would arrive at this sort of anti-God conclusion on their own. Understand what I'm saying here. It wasn't the initial intent for Marx to come out and say, hey, this is secular, this is anti-God, so you should be communist. He was saying that there's an unfair distribution, an unequal distribution between state, elite, the wealthy, and you peasants. And therefore, you should become communist. And in becoming communist, then you will accept this sort of radical materialist philosophy that will eventually lead you to an anti-God worldview. And that's exactly what happened. And so another way you could look at it is to say that Karl Marx and the communists, in communism, are attempting to reduce the human existence down to price. And they're not reducing it down to price because they're so worried about price or the cost of living, although they promote it that way. Really, if you reduce the human existence down to price, there is no room for God. There is no room for faith. There's no room for anything other than the acquisition of material wealth or the anger and resent that you build from the lack thereof material wealth. And so you can see that the Marxist worldview and the communist worldview is a radical materialist worldview. And in this radical materialism, in this reduction to price, the easy target was women. And this is what we're going to get into. Now, I posted a video, and I'll stop you right there. We're going to come back to this. But I posted a video over the weekend that I came across on Instagram of what looks to be a sex class. And they're popping up all over the place, okay? These yoga classes, twerking classes. For those who don't know twerking's more of a provocative style of dancing that you've seen in ancient cultures. You know, they had belly dancers there in parts of the Middle East and India. They had, it comes from that same background of dance, but it was more fomented in hip hop culture, modern hip hop culture, and twerking and strip clubs, and I'm not making any prejudgments about that right now. It's not the point of this example, but this class I saw where a woman had a man laying down on the floor, and he's just laying there. It looks like a CPR dummy, and she is proceeding to teach about 20 women in the class how to ride him in a sexual manner. Now, if you got kids, and I know that we have some out there that say it's positive and it's helpful for them to listen to this with their kids because we're having an honest conversation and they want their kids to be exposed to that. We're going to talk about some things here that are a little more adult, a little more grown up. So if you don't want your kids to hear this, then I understand. But we're doing it all out of an attempt to educate and teach. So this video is of this woman teaching a class to about 20 to 30 other women, mostly black women, but there were a few snowflakes sprinkled in there, a few white women sprinkled in there. And she's literally giving them like step-by-step instructions, counting the method out. And there's this moment where she, says you got to, rise up this way, pivot back this way, stay low, and basically she went from a cowgirl, what is traditionally called a cowgirl position, to reverse cowgirl position. And the entire class goes, oh, okay. Like they had just discovered fire. And I just, for me, just to be honest with all you out there as listeners, for me, these kind of things discourage me. They frustrate me. They keep me up at night. They worry me for my daughter, for my son, but for our society as a whole. So I posted this video, and I said, and you guys want me to follow black women? ? Come on. And this clip is going viral. Actually, let's pull it up, Patrick, if we can. It's right there below. It's the if you scroll down on my Twitter here, it'll be one of the last tweets. But and all of you could go find this tweet as well. It's one of the it's one of the more recent tweets, and it's actually went viral in the last. Keep scrolling, way down. Way down. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going here. We're just finding it here. We're locating it. Keep going. Keep going. Yep, here it is. Yeah, just click on. Yeah. So all of you who are watching, we're going to pull it up for you here, but at least those who are listening, you'll be able to hear the nature of this class. Start it over for me. Pause it. Okay.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Left foot goes over the body. I'm staying low, turning around. Oh, okay. And I'm gonna go this way.
Okay, pause. Yeah. So if you're listening at home, that may not give you much insight into what we're looking at, but if you're watching, you can see. But all of you can click over to Twitter real quick and reference the video and then come back. Anyway, I posted this and this tweet went viral. I mean, by standards, I think over 1 million people have viewed the tweet. Over 500, 600,000 people have viewed this video. I don't know what the difference is between viewing the tweet and viewing the video. That's one of those Twitter metrics, things that I haven't even figured out in my head yet. But anyway, a lot of people have seen this tweet. It went viral, and Jason Whitlock retweeted it. And then there's all these people who are angry about what I said. And I just think it's hilarious and I love it. And that's mostly what the impulse was, to dive into this man versus woman thing today and to go back to this cultural Marxist history and what we're dealing with today. But I want to get real granular with black women in a moment, and we're going to do that. And if you're a black woman out there, it may be very sensitive for you today, but hey, you either got the stones for the conversations or you don't. We got to come back to this video because this video culturally says 1,000 words at least, to say the least. But let's circle back here. The Marxists, they want to reduce everything down to price. If you reduce the human existence down to price, by default, people arrive at an anti-God worldview. There's no room for God when your entire life is based around the focus on price. And in doing so, the easy target to go after was women, because there's such a clear distinction between the way society is built for men and for women. I mean, just from a historical standpoint. Men, more industrious. Women, for a long time, up until about 60 years ago, had been the nurturers, had been the caregivers, had been, more of a supportive role to the way society was being built, modern society. And so as soon as you see Marxism come into existence during the Industrial Revolution or during, an Industrial Revolution time period, they go right after the women. They go right after the women and they tell the women, look, you're getting a raw deal here. It's not fair for you. It's not equal. And this is why. It's not to protect women or to empower women. This is a lie. I mean, this is a complete and utter lie. The goal is not to empower women. The goal is to pit women against men. That's what the cultural Marxists want to do. That's what the communists want to do. They want a coalition of women to transfer political power to a small majority of men who affirm Marxist and communist policies, but they're smart enough to stand on top of them. And so there's a whole duality here between the beta male who actually subservients himself to women out of a self-loathing and self-doubt and self-hatred. And then there are the sneaky predatory men who pose as beta males, and really they just want all the political capital they can get from any pro-women movement. And we see this constantly throughout history, Marxists or not. But the Marxists introduced this. This is the Marxist MO. Because if you reduce the human existence down to price and you get women on board, you have hijacked the human reproductive system. The oldest and maybe the most powerful biological system on earth is the human reproductive system, especially from a psychological standpoint. Okay. You get women all on one accord, on one message, on one singing from one hymn book, right? The hymn book of inequality, and Marxist or communist or socialist remedy. You've got the men by the balls. literally, no pun intended. Um, and what you've done is, and what you've also done in the meantime, is you've distorted the value of human work. You've distorted the actual value of human production. And so when you distort it, it becomes easy. It becomes easier to tell people what the value of human work is, what the value of human production is. And then you get to arbitrarily name the price on certain things. You get to arbitrarily dictate the perception, the perception of value around certain things, such as citizenship, right? Citizenship, number one. Let's just be honest. You tell women, hey, look, men laying the bricks in society, men doing all the construction work, men, doing more likely to die. Men are more likely to, any number of things. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Men do a certain type of work. They provide a certain type of value for our modern society to run the way that it does. And if you tell women that this is unfair, you've actually hijacked women and then used them to be a suppressive or an oppressive force against the male labor pool. Okay, and we've seen that. And a great example of this is the World Cup. You had the Women's World Cup and the Men's World Cup, and I think in the Women's World Cup it generated like something like $30 million of total revenue, and the women I think got. No, maybe it was 300. No, it was $300 million of total revenue. And the women got, I don't know, it was like 90 million, 60 million out of that. All the players, they collectively got that much money. The Men's World Cup, I think, generated $4 billion of revenue. And so the male players ended up getting like 300 million out of the total money. And many feminist advocates or women's equality or Time's Up advocates said, look how much the male soccer players are getting compared to the female soccer players. They got almost $100 million, 100 times more money than the female soccer players did. But when you actually look at the total revenue and the amount of money that was given to the players, the women got a much bigger percentage than the men did. The women got a bigger percentage of the money, the overall money, than the men did. Do the quick math, 300 million from 4 billion or 30 million from 300 million. Okay. That's women getting about 10% of the money that was generated and the men getting about 4%. Is that about 4%? Something like that. So, I mean, you see there that there's an info war being waged culturally, politically to use women, to weaponize women as a bludgeon or as a battle axe against men and men's labor and men's value and men's production. Okay, that's just the reality. And we see this in little small examples as well, but all of it goes back to this. When you hijack the human reproductive system, you take society by the balls. You take men by the balls. No pun intended, but quite literally. And so the way that this has come to get out of control, you could say, is when you distort the value of men's work, when you distort the value of production, you can rename, you can reprice, you can rebrand what value actually is. Because remember, the value of a thing is an agreement amongst the people. The value of a thing is an agreement and a decision or a desire or a balance between supply and demand that the people choose. And in this way, your citizenship boils down to your vote and your dollar, because your dollar informs much of what this global corporatocracy wants to do and what they end up doing, especially what they want to say or what they want to tell you or what they want to sell you. And it's not by accident that women, in all of their oppression and all of their historical oppression, especially in America under this tyrannical racist male patriarchy, make the majority of consumer purchases. I mean, you see the alliance right there between the corporatocracy and your everyday woman and the story that's being told. oh, society was built for the pleasure of men. It was built for the utility of man's ambition and their predatory sexual lust and so on and so forth. But really, when you look throughout history, most men spend most of their life trying to become financially stable, trying to become financially independent, trying to become financially wealthy, or whatever the case may be, to give their money to a woman. That's the truth. The way we've built society in the West was intended to put women on a pedestal. And we've placed women on a pedestal, and it's a very Judeo-Christian pedestal, if you ask me. And it's formed around the idea that women and men have a natural role, that there is a natural order, and men and women have a natural role. And in that natural role, in service of that natural role, is to be in service to God, that the God to man, to woman, to child. And when we do that, women naturally take on a more nurturing, caregiving, community building, nation building role. And the entire Marxist movement and the communist movement, not by accident, the women's movement, the suffrage movement, which was before World War II, but the suffrage movement, and then the women's movement of the 60s that came alongside the civil rights movement, looks to undo that. They look to undo that. And in doing so, they create a lot of chaos. But if you look at the granular in their arguments, the arguments fall all over themselves. They're not anchored, because the movement was never anchored in logic itself. The movement said that women have been oppressed outright, that everything about Western society was an oppression of women. There's nothing vaguely appropriate about that. There's nothing vaguely appropriate about looking at our history that way in America. Now, should women have the right to vote? I would say yes. But that was the real hiccup. And in this way, it maps right onto the Civil Rights Act. We have all of these whole swath, these broad claims that are made about culture, about policy, about the way our Constitution was written, the flaws, the pitfalls, all of these things. And we tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We did that with the civil rights, which then became affirmative action, which then became the welfare state, and so on and so forth. And I'll get back to that in a moment. But and then we have the women's rights movement that says, hey, women are nothing but oppressed. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Should they have had the right to vote? Yes, absolutely. Should they have been looked at as physical property? I would say no. I would say that was a bit archaic. But is society completely built around the oppression of women? I mean, are you kidding me? And don't look, if you're listening to this podcast, you may listen to this and go, oh, well, duh, Royce. I mean, everybody with half a brain. No, stop. Stop right there. Understand wherever you are right now, whether you're riding in your car, whether you're on the treadmill, whether you're at your office, wherever you are, the prevailing philosophical and political ideology around you, in your corporations, in your schools, in your town halls, is this idea. This is the feminization of society, and it has led to the dumbnification of society. This is what the Marxist professors in universities knew. We're not gonna beat capitalism in an open market, because people like the idea of social mobility, especially on the tail end of a civil rights movement, where Black people are just now getting a fair shake, at least as the narrative goes. They're getting a fair shake in the 70s, in the early 80s. We're starting to see that Black people are being led into certain workplaces and things through a cultural shift. So why would Black people want to give up their social? Why would anybody in a capitalist society want to give up their social mobility? Well, social mobility held the day. No, we can't go to communism, because if we go to communism, I could never go from being a peasant to being a titan of industry. I could never really be an entrepreneur, not without the state's okay, and that's what they have there in China. China runs all the corporations in China. And there's an impulse for us to be like China, which is also very interesting, but it's not a shocker when you understand this history. So the open market and social mobility ruled the day. So they went to the universities and they started to tell a cultural narrative that moved everybody into a firing range, into a shooting gallery, okay? Put us right over the target. And what is that target? Security, materialism. They drew on an old narrative. They drew on an old essentials, an old set of essentials that people need in order to feel like they're living good. Do you have security? Do you have materials? Do you have the resources? And that's exactly what they've done. That was the growth of technology. That's why you see an alignment: neoliberal, Marxist, globalist, Church of LGBTQ, anti-God, technocracy. 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, it's just right in order. And the shooting gallery they now have us in is that social mobility can't get it. It's impossible. The wealth distribution gap is too big. There's no way to. There's no way to create equality. So what we have to settle for is to get all of you accepting and hooked on virtual reality, a redefined standard of living based on this new digital market, this new digital value, right? I'm seeing now things pop up about digital real estate. You know, you got your NFTs and you got your Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And I'm not saying that blockchain and all of those things don't have their use and that they don't have great value in some places in society. But the overall narrative is that we can now solve for the unequal distribution of resources and wealth through a digital world, a virtual world. We're going to redefine the value of humanity. We're going to redefine the value of men. We're going to redefine the value or production of work and labor, manual labor. We're going to redefine all these things. And in doing so, it may sound good. It may sound like more people are going to have access to the internet or to a Tesla or whatever the case may be. But in actuality, what they've really done is they've put you in a place where what you need shrunk. What you think you need, what you deserve is actually shrunk. It's the greatest trick. So you need more. You need more access. You need more resources. You need more individual autonomy and power. So give all of your rights, give all of your wealth, give all of your trust over to a super state of technocrats, and we'll take care of you. That's how they're using women. That's how they've used women. They came through three distinct institutions. They came through the universities. They came through your education. And really, that was the starting point. It was your education. Your education is the starting point. But now it's medical, right? It's medical. It's technology, which is one and the same. It's medical, it's technology, right? It's culture. But it started with our universities. It started in the institutions. It started with the Marxists going into our colleges and saying, the only way we can solve this is if we teach people from a young age. We have to have their minds, and you have to respect your enemies' skill, your enemy's abilities, your enemy's successes when you're in a battle, because we're in a battle, we're in a war, and they got a leg up on us in that way. They got a leg up on us, and they have one now. So we get the reduction down the price. We get women telling a story that they've been oppressed. We get men who start to voluntarily abnegate the value of their own work and their own labor and their own production in society. And before you know it, nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to work. The actual value of a hard day's work is where the war was waged. It's not about the split. I mean, the split is just a bonus. That was a secondary effect. But the fundamental shift was that people's understanding or their relationship to work and the value of work is gone. It's leaving. People are just opting out of work. Look how hard it is to get health insurance. Look how hard it is to get health insurance if you're not going through a corporation that's big enough to have a health insurance plan. Look at how hard it is to get health insurance on your own. And then if you want to go with Obamacare, which is this great herald of healthcare initiative, healthcare for all, right? The communist mothership, healthcare, universal healthcare. In order to get Obamacare, you have to be below a certain income. You have to be economically unempowered. You have to be economically disenfranchised to qualify for the most part. Or you got to jump through a bunch of hoops. I mean, it's not like if you're poor and you can't afford health care, okay, great. We'll take care of you. But if you work, if you're a nation of shopkeepers, if you're an independent business owner, if you're an up-and-coming entrepreneur, you got to go through hoops. They don't want you working. They don't want you working. If you work, then you have a belief about what you deserve and having your own sort of plot of life, your own property. Life, liberty, and the ownership of property is what it was initially supposed to be. And then they said the pursuit of happiness, and they probably thought that sort of poetic, that little poetic change would pay dividends, but it's been weaponized greatly in the aftermath of our Constitution being written. But originally it was the life, liberty, and the pursuit of property, the pursuit of land. Because if you own land, then if you really own land, not I own land, but I pay some exhaustible property tax to a Leviathan federal government for some phantom budgets that usually end up in the Ukraine, not actually in the Ukraine, but whatever the Ukraine was throughout history. Not that type of property ownership, but if I actually own my property, then I am the bastion against economic imperialism. It's not all owned by a king. It's not all owned by one central government. It's not all owned by a few. It's owned by each individual citizen. That was the nation of shopkeepers paired with the Second Amendment that was fundamentally intended to be a bastion against economic imperialism. And they're using women to undermine that. I'm sorry to tell you, and I'm not telling you to get down on women or to alienate women or to try and browbeat women. We need women to wake up to this, understand what's being run on them so that they can walk back. They can come back to the light because they are being used this way. And I'll show you the perfect example. The narrative told after the civil rights, with the civil rights movement, after the civil rights movement and paired with the women's rights movement is that the only way to safeguard against tyranny is not a nation of shopkeepers in the Second Amendment, but a Leviathan federal government, a federal government that will always and forever expand until there's nothing left, until the federal government, the line between the federal government and a nation of shopkeepers and entrepreneurs or corporations disappears. You got all your AOCs and Ilhan Omars and Kamala Harris's and Elizabeth Warrens and all these other progressive, left-leaning Democrats saying that socialism is the remedy to unequal distribution of wealth and resources. But anybody with half a brain knows when you take socialism and you expand it to the global scale and you bring in the corporation, it's the highest form of corporatism. It's the highest form of capitalism. I mean, it's just capitalism naming itself socialism. Global socialism in a world that's run by corporations is corporatocracy. That's just the reality. I don't care what you call it. When you merge the Federal Reserve, when you merge the Federal Reserve with the WHO and Goldman and Sachs, you now have a corporatocracy, and they all know it. They're trying to tell you that they're going to protect your interests from the corporate predators by making them pay an extra tax if they make over $350,000. But why would you care about paying an extra tax when you're worth $100 billion? And I'm not mad at people being worth $100 billion. I'm not saying there shouldn't be people who are super rich, because there are going to be people who are super rich, and we shouldn't have an animus towards people being rich. You get what you what you've earned. The problem is when people get more than what they've earned based on crony capital practice, that undermines it. But another problem is the people who are down here below that line of wealth, or even in the lower class, being tricked based on their envy and resent for the rich. And that's what Karl Marx aimed to do, and he's done it beautifully. And they've done it so well. They've merged the ideology so well. You now think they're different. You people over there on the left, you Democrats, you think there's a difference. You think there's a difference between the neoliberal and the Marxists. There's not. Look at the goal. Look at the aim. Look at the end result. Look what they opt for. They both opt for the CCP. They both want to be a state capitalist authoritarian regime. They want to lock you in your home if you don't get vaccinated. They want a universal basic. They want a social credit score based on your vaccination status. They want to give you a universal basic income that allows them to be able to tell you, in effect, what you can and can't do on a daily basis. Both of them, their aims are the same. You have to be smart enough to see this. We have to be smart enough to understand what's being run on us. All being run under the guise that women have been oppressed historically, and the only way to change that is to give over to the ideology of a man. I mean, I could see if you women out there were going to prop up a woman's philosophical thought and say, this is the road we're walking down. We're going with her. She understands, a Joan of Arc character, but you all would have burned Joan of Arc at the stake too today. Most of these women out here, they would have burned Joan of Arc at the stake because she professed to hear the voice of God. But no, it's not a woman's philosophy you want to follow. You want to follow an anti-Jew man from Germany, nonetheless, from the place that you say is the sine qua non of white supremacy. And Karl Marx was on the record talking about black people terrible, calling them the N-word, saying that, you can never do this, and this with these N-word. These are the people this is the guy that you're following. And you talk about white supremacy. When I sit at home, I start to wonder, are the women who follow this movement actually stupid, or are they just playing stupid? Because one of them would change, my sort of engagement. Because if you're playing stupid and you're trying to pull one over, it's an insult to my intelligence. But if you're genuinely stupid, then I feel a sort of empathy for that. I feel a sympathy towards you, because I know that this sort of Marxist game that's been run here, it came through the universities, but it's not just the people who went to college. Although that is the bastion of the bourgeois class, especially in the feminist world, or even the hegemony between beta male and feminist political politics. They were Marxist and university educated for sure. But it's not just the Marxists in the universities. It's not people who are actually out college educated. It's that the political leaders of our society, whether they're your media industrial complex, big media institutions, whether they're your lawyers, right, or they're your actual politicians, they actually were educated by Marxist professors, and they become the leading and prevailing thought. This is why individuals are important. This is why thought leaders are important. And we get into these arguments, you shouldn't follow anyone but God. No, man's going to have leaders. Understand, society is going to have leaders. There's no doubt about that. The question is, what are our leaders trying to do? Where are they trying to lead us towards? And many of our leaders have built this movement where 90% of black women vote Democrat. And this is where I'm going to circle back to the video now, because the video prompted this sort of criticism, anger, backlash from black women. I'm here to tell you, I don't care. I was raised by black women. I was raised in a community full of black women. I have children by black women. My mother is a black woman. My grandmother was a black woman. Now, I also have a grandmother that was Norwegian, and I have a grandmother that was Mexican. And they are loved. Both women are loved by the black community. They both hung out in the black community. Actually, my grandma, my Norwegian grandmother, she hung out on the west side with my Mexican family. That's a funny little crew they got there. But it's St. Paul, it's Minneapolis. If you're from Minnesota, you know that our neighborhoods are are diverse like that. Genuinely, they're diverse like that. And in St. Paul, especially, these racial demographics were integrated from school to the neighborhood to sports and so on and so forth. So I was fortunate in that way. But I'm not going to defend being black. Actually, what I'm going to do is say that most of y'all are lying. I'm here to tell you again, and I keep coming back to this because black women are the linchpin of the whole thing. Because you have white women who have to run a narrative about race, and they're white men who are patriarchal and tyrannical. But because it's based on identity politics, they can't abnegate their whiteness, although they would love to, and they try to often. That's why you have people who are trying to be trans race now in the white female demographic in America, who actually think they can just choose to be black if they want to. If they wake up one morning, they feel black in their head, then they can be black. And those two snowflakes that were trickling into that twerk class are probably some of those self-loathing trans race candidate type of white women. Not saying that they have to be. You could be a white woman and take a dance class. You can be a white woman and take a dance class that's more hip hop specific. I'm just what do you want? I'm skeptical of you. That's what I'll say. I'm skeptical of you from the outset. You're not alone. I got skepticism a lot of people, especially in today's society. But black women are the linchpin, because going back to the suffrage movement, the white woman, the white feminist went to the black woman and said, you're walking side by side with the black man for civil rights, but he got the right to vote before you did. You think that's fair? And the black woman couldn't help herself. She goes, oh, you know what? That ain't fair. That ain't fair. I should be able to vote too. And here you see the beginning of a three-headed hydra. A three-headed hydra to concretize, to solidify what was in the Marxist universities in our communities, in our grassroots communities, far away from you ever getting an education, far away from you getting some luxurious 4-year state institution or liberal university education, way away from that. 3 distinct places: the anti-family court, the welfare state, the anti-family court, the welfare state, and healthcare. Right? Those are the 3 places where this whole Marxist unequal distribution of resources that was done to us by racist white men is now going to take root in black communities. And you can't tell me it's not true, because I lived it. I've seen it. I've seen the anti-family court play on a narrative where black fathers are absent. But really, many black women are running their boyfriend. First off, many black women had no intention on having a long-term relationship with a man. Some just want a baby that they can post on the internet like a designer bag, or walk around like a designer bag. Another symptom of that radical materialism, that your child is an extension of your radical materialism. You see Kim Kardashian playing that out. Baby is like a designer bag to her. And y'all are following her too. No, and I don't mean like philosophically or politically. Many of you are literally following Kim Kardashian on social media. Those are your leaders. Look at who your leaders are. Look at what they're promoting. Look at where they want to lead you. Okay, but you have the anti-family court system. You have medicine, right? You have healthcare, right? And what was the other one I said? I just forgot. The anti-family court system was one. Oh, the welfare state. There you go, right? The welfare state. These are the way that they took the Marxist university prevailing ideas about feminism and they put them right there in the ghetto. Y'all don't even know who you're following. Joy Ann Reid, Marxist educated. Rachel Maddow, Marxist educated. Don Lemon, Marxist educated. What's the girl's name from, I forgot. I'm forgetting her name now. But pick one. All of them. The HBCUs littered with Marxism now. LGBTQism. The HBCUs become a bastion of LGBTQ political politics and rhetoric. And my thing is, how do you square the circle? How do you in one breath say that this entire system is built on white supremacy, but you're following all white movements, and at bottom, you're following a white German philosopher? all of you leftists, progressives, and you lukewarm centrists in the middle who just lean a little to the left because you're too weak and cowardly to stand up for your own beliefs or to even have an original or authentic belief. How do you square the circle that we're going to run behind this movement or train that says this is all white supremacy, but you're all following a white German philosopher who you could argue actually isn't really white, but he was LARPing as white because really he was a Jew who rejected his Jewish identity and rejected God. And the Jews actually do have historical connection to what are considered black people, African people. I mean, the Jews came from Africa. That's just what it is. That's just a fact. The Jews came from Africa. I mean, it is what it is, okay? But by the time you get up to Karl Marx in the 1800s in Europe, he's LARPing as a white man. He's saying N-word this, N-word that. He wants to reject his Jewish identity, and it's not by accident or coincidence that in doing so, he also wants to reject God. These are the people that you're following. You don't see an alignment there? You don't see a correlation there? You don't see a correlation, black women, with this sort of anti-God philosophy? Let's just call the Communist Manifesto the anti-God manifesto. Y'all ain't even reading Karl Marx. I'm sick of playing around. And then I had some black women jump on there, and they come with the same old milquetoast, lukewarm Twitter response. It's funny to watch. It's really funny when you're a person who says original things or has original insights or talks from an original standpoint on the internet, and you get to watch responses. You can almost see the hive mind that's created culturally, and it hurts my heart. I'm telling you right now, black women, I'm getting down a little bit today, but I love you. I love you, and it hurts my heart to see you brainwashed by a white anti-God man from the 1800s in Germany, Europe, because there are much, much greater minds to follow. Jesus Christ would be one, but there are many even after that. Let's say you want to stay in the heresy. Let's say you want to stay in your anti-God journey. I'm not telling you when you could come into faith because Saul came into faith after an adult life of denial of God. Peter denied Christ 3 times. I'm not saying when it's going to happen. You don't have to believe in God when I say I'm not the authority. Let's say you want to stay on the anti-God worldview. Fine. But there are much better people to follow, even in your own identity politics of black thought or pro-black empowerment, than Karl Marx. But you cannot ignore the fact that Karl Marx, as a philosophical hegemony, has had the ability over time to co-opt many of all these black thought leaders. Black thought leaders who you all say are, for the cause or down for the movement, or these people, they believe in our people. They're helping our people, but they're following a white man. Sorry, they're following an anti-Jew who's LARPing as a white man. I know a lot of you guys aren't understanding what I'm saying here. The Jews have black in them, especially if they make the case that they're cultural ethnic Jews. If they're ethnic Jews, that means that their ethnicity is rooted back to a time when Jews came from Africa. They were Semitic people. Now, all of your European Jews who have either adopted Judaism with no ethnic tie, right? They just picked up the religion, which I don't, first for the Jew, then for the Gentile. I'm not against people picking up faith in God disconnected from an ethnic background. Remember, this isn't a radical materialist faith, this thing, Christianity, this belief in Abrahamic God. It's not an ethno-national faith. Ethnicity or the overemphasis of race is a radical materialist mentality. So I don't mind that people picked up Judaism in 1000 AD or 1200 AD. I don't mind that the Khazarians picked up Judaism and there was no ethnic tie. Now, I don't believe that there was no ethnic tie because traditionally, when one group of people meet another group of people, what happens is they either kill each other or they start to, cohabitate. They start to mix and blend. We saw it with the Vikings and the Germanics, and we see it with the Slavs and the Germanics, and we see it here in America between slave master and slave. We see it in South America and Central America. We see it all over. When new groups of people come into contact with each other, there's usually a moment of distrust, violence, but then then usually there's some interbreeding, okay? So I think that the Jews who were more Caucasian, who came from a more Caucasus ethnic background that encountered the early Jews, probably mixed with those early Jews, and there is an ethnic tie. But the fact that these more Caucasian Jews of Europe try and deny any of their black ethnicity tells a profound story about them. And Karl Marx is a great example, because when you look at a picture of Karl Marx, and you could bring a picture of Karl Marx up on the browser, I want people to see this. Let's bring a picture up of Karl Marx. He kind of looks like a black man. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, when you look at him, I mean, come on. I mean, he's German, but yeah, he kind of has a sort of, he has a kind of Frederick. I mean, maybe, it's the hair and it's the beard, and I'm just kind of being funny now. But the point I'm making is, you could bring me back up. People see that, they know what he looks like. Bring me back up on the camera center line here. And I don't mean to get off on this Jewish topic, but what I'm saying is, Karl Marx was a Jew. His father was a rabbi. He came from a long line of rabbis. And you get to him, he rejects God. He writes the Communist Manifesto. In his rejection of God, he writes the prevailing ideology of the entire Western political culture today. You guys don't see a correlation there? I mean, how can you overlook that? I mean, in that alone, there's this sort of vindication of Christian in faith in God. I mean, man. And some of you, I know some of you out there think that Marxism is a good thing. But how do you square the circle? How do you say in one breath that life is more than money? It's more than price. It's more than materialism and resources. There's this greater humanity. There's this greater good. There's this greater purpose to life. But then you follow an ideology that's all about price and determining that greater human condition based on price. How do you square that circle? And so I had black women respond to this post where I said, I'm not following black women. And their response, or a common response, was, and this is a common response that people use all the time when you talk about race or demographic or men versus women. We don't play any of that here. We're going to talk about race. We're going to talk about gender. We're going to talk about age. We're going to talk about boomers. We're going to talk about all the groups, because there is validity and merit to groups. It's not 100%, but there are validity to groups. Doesn't mean that we should separate ourselves with a materialist worldview. But what it does mean, in a world where we have been separated into a ethno-national sometimes, or demographic consumer-based society, that we have to sort through these stories that have been told before we can move on to a more equitable, fair, and logical formation of society. Did I say that right? Should I take another run at that, Patrick? I think that's right. Yeah. No, it'd be great to not talk about race. It'd be great to not talk about groups that are, in the face of God, superficial. But we've told the story so long and so many people believe it. We better sort this out before we move forward. Let's not move forward under false premise, and that's why we're doing this now. And I'm going to use black women as an example, not to beat up on you, but because the example is so good. The example is perfect. Oh, you're not talking about all black women. Oh, this twerk class doesn't represent all black women. Are you kidding me? First of all, nobody said it's representing all black women. All I'm saying is that there is a prevailing political movement that says that black men are the problem in America, and that we should, for a time, step back and let black women lead. And if you say that's not true, you're lying. You're either a woman who's in on it, you're a woman who doesn't know and isn't paying attention, you like your politics with French fries, or your morning horoscope, or you're a man who's trying to get laid. And I'm going to get down on you beta male cucks last. I'm going to save you for last. I'm going to save the best for last. You black men out here who are carrying water behind these black women and talking about divine feminine energy and being a man and tapping into your divine feminine energy and being a feminist and supporting black women or letting our black queens lead and all this other bullshit you're saying so that you can have a chance to get laid. I'm going to get down on you last, but let me speak to the black women who have been the victims of this predatory psychological and sexual marketplace behavior. Yes, anytime you talk about any group, it'd be foolish to think that you're talking about the entire group, every single person who's a black woman, partly because a person's identity, how they identify, could be different than how we as a society identify them. There are some black women out there who don't identify as black women, although society would look at them and say, you're a black woman. Now, skin is immutable. And this is the difference between the LGBTQ identity and the racial identity. Racial identity is based on immutable qualities. Skin is an immutable characteristic, meaning that you can't do anything about it. On presence, on the way that physical, visual reality, your sexual identity or your sexual preference or your sexual proclivities are not immutable. Now, you can make some crazy, in my opinion, some crazy argument about you being born a woman in a man's body or a man in a woman's body. All of that stuff is an episode on its own, and I'm not even going to go there because I'm going to need all 120 minutes to get down on this man versus woman narrative. But it's wrapped in here, and we'll circle back to that in the future because that's played a little Hydra role as well. And that tends to come from European anti-Jews as well. We saw that Amy Dean said the Jewish community, which is the anti-Jewish community because they don't believe in God. Let's be clear. They're responsible for gay marriage. They're responsible for the LGBTQ advancements. Okay, and there's great criticism to lay there, but they're not alone because the Catholic Church was in on that too. The Catholic Church started to make broad expansion of who could be in the clergy around LGBTQ political social pressures. But we'll get to that at a different time. My point is that black women are not a hegemony around the world. They're not even a hegemony in America. But where they are a hegemony that we can, with great confidence, look at and identify is voting Democrat. You vote 91% Democrat. And that's where my interest in it lies. That's where identifying and talking about it is fruitful. I'm running for political office. I ran for political office and I'm involved in political dialogue, a political conversation. And mostly what I'm talking about on social media or any other place is the ramifications of our political worldview, our politics. Most of us have been conditioned to treat our politics as some secondary, some casual or secondary thing. Our politics are central. Res publica. I mean, the republic, the health of the republic. There used to be a time when your common man had a profound sense of the overall health of the republic. Your common woman, even your child had a profound sense of the overall health of the republic. Now it's like, oh, well, politics is a wash. Republicans, Democrats, they all lie. So what's the point? Let's just get money. Let's just get our money. Let's get to the bag. That's a common sentiment in hip hop culture and in black culture. Say it's not, and you're lying. You're lying. Say that there isn't a black Twitter. Say that there isn't a prevailing or predominant message or ethos or spirit or a set of sayings or phrases that are superficially used that come from black Twitter or come from the online space of black America. Tell me there's not, and I'm just going to tell you you're a liar. And a lot of you are liars. A lot of you follow Karl Marx into a black hole, into an abyss, into a line city, into a gulag, into a tyrannical superstate, into an apartment building that becomes a prison during medical emergencies or COVID pandemic. A lot of you will follow this white German philosopher, this anti-Jew philosopher, into slavery. A lot of you will do it. It'll be slavery rebranded. It will be slavery that makes you feel that your new digital avatar is a representation of equality and fairness, but it'll still be slavery. And if you don't understand that that both can be true, you're destined to be a slave. You already are a slave. You're a slave psychologically and philosophically. But in the near future, you may actually become a slave in the physical sense. Yes, Black women, you are a hegemony politically. 91% of Black women voted for Joe Biden. 91%. You know how hard it is to come across a 91% majority in any field of any industry or any field or any industry or any set of data in the entire human existence? To come across a data set that's 91% in one direction? Do you know how hard that is to come across? The vaccines that you took probably didn't even have a 91% efficacy. They didn't have a 91% efficacy. Let's just say what it is. But what I'm telling you is even the data that was fudged and tampered with, and we now know was manipulated, even in the manipulated data that they want to pass as being genuine and authentic, doesn't have a 91% efficacy. Patrick, am I tripping? Holy moly, 91% data set? And you're going to tell me that's not a hegemony, Black women? No, you've become a hegemony, whether you know it or not, whether you've participated or not, whether you signed the dotted line or not, whether you want to admit it or not. You've become a hegemony, and that's why I'm here to talk to you this way. I know it sounds a little bit aggressive and, a little bit negative, but I'm not one of your spiritual advisors or one of your Judeo-Buddhist vegan cokehead shaman classes. I'm not here to run for office to run a country like a Judeo-Buddhist vegan cokehead shaman. I'm telling you what it is. You are a hegemony. And if you would like to not be a hegemony, maybe you should start to act like that. Maybe you should stop saying all the things that you have discovered, either culturally or spiritually, will get you the most likes or retweets or reshares or reposts or whatever the case may be on social media. Because in voting 91% Democrat and becoming a hegemony politically, it seems to correlate to you becoming a hegemony on social media through your digital identity. Do you see the correlation there? Are you willing to admit that? Are you willing to acknowledge that? That you all seem to take selfies with the same angles and the same outfits in the same places with the same tags and the same locations. And I'm going to Cabo, or I went to some Judeo-Buddhist shaman prayer site with 3 stones and a horoscope in Eastern I don't know where. Eastern Taurusville. Or Eastern, Scorpioville, or wherever you guys hang out. And I don't mean to demean you, but it looks ridiculous to me. I'm just telling you, to me it looks ridiculous. And look, I don't need to have sex with you. So that's why I can talk to you this way. Because there's nothing in me. I've sorted out the part of my programming that makes the analysis, that makes the assessment, or that makes the calculation, that if I say these things publicly, then I will opt out of the potential of success sexually or romantically in this demographic. I'm out. I'm out of there. Done. I got 4 children, 3 women. 2 of them were Black. One of them's Asian. She was from Thailand, who are mostly considered the Black people of Asia. If you want to get technical, the Chinese think of the Thai people like monkeys too. Okay, so everybody has their little corner of racism on the world stage, and in fact, you don't. We'll get back to the CCP at a later moment, but because there's a whole the CCP and the affinity for the politics of China or the government or the culture of China is the greatest contradiction to any human rights advocacy or claim in modern time by a landslide. It makes this man and woman one and this black woman one look small. But they're connected. They're connected, right? You're anti-racism, you're anti-patriarchy, you're anti the oppression or colonization of Africa. And you all want to talk about your African roots, and you do your little African dance, and you think that you're tapped into the culture, but you buy all your goods from a Chinese company that went to Africa to oppress people to get the materials to make it. You're voting for a neoliberal party. You're voting for a neoliberal party that signed over the rights to the colonized Africa to the CCP because they don't want to work there no more. They don't want to have to deal with the mines, and they don't want to have to deal with the forever wars that it takes to weaponize and pay some tribal leader to kill a whole village of people, an opposing village of people to run some oil pipeline or some mine shaft where they get their rare earth metals. They don't want to have to deal with it no more because the European monarchies then got fat. They're so fat now, all they can do is sit on their thrones and point and give directions, right? And you see how much rhythm I got. I'm using the rhythm so you know this is a real rhythm. I have rhythm like that. You know, not only from my black side, but also that Mexican side. You know, we get to doing that waltz, we get to doing that salsa. We got that rhythm. But I'm just trying to tell you that all of you want to, you know, you're on the dance with the twerking. The twerking has become the herald of your black identity, your divine femininity, your African roots. But you vote for a party that has weaponized, that has utilized China to recolonize Africa and give you goods at a fourth of the price so the African people can never develop into a modern nation or a modern world, into a modern society, so that you can be on TikTok, dancing, twerking. But you pro-black though, and you want me to follow you. No, you don't even want me to follow you. That's the real scam you're running in. And part of me wants to think that you don't know, but the part of me that grew up in the black community knows that you know. It knows that you know. You don't want strong, black, intelligent men to follow you. No, because we're so few and far between. Because the whole society has been hijacked to pup you around your sexual desires and lust. I gotta go where the sexual desire and lust takes me. I'm a captive to my sexual desire and lust. If the big, beautiful eyed, big booty, big breast black women are going that way and they say they like their men this way, then I got to become that in order to have sex or be or to have a romantic relationship with that woman. So I'll go wherever she takes me. I'm just marching around. I'll dance like she dances. I'll even become gender non-binary if need to. Put a skirt on me. Put leather on me. Put the leather BDSM outfit on me and march me around Times Square in New York City. Put a leash on me. I'm seeing some of y'all out here with leash. I mean, that's more of a white liberal thing, but it's coming for you black men too. I can see it. I can see it in your impulse. Your impulse is leaning there. You don't want to wear a suit. The suit is a representation of patriarchy. You got your pants halfway off your ass. You got your pants halfway off your ass talking about racism. At least if you're wearing a suit out there, at least if you're wearing a three-piece suit and a cop shoots you in the middle of the street, he can't say you were dressed like a gangbanger. Now, should you have to dress according to the tyranny of police departments or no? But let's stop talking about what we should or shouldn't have to do and deal with what we need to deal with and what it is. It is what it is. And our black communities are out of control. And that is a hegemony. That's a genuine hegemony. And if you say that that's not true, I know you're full of shit. Our black communities are out of control. Out of control. 15-year-olds showing up at the elementary school. 15, 16-year-olds showing up to shoot 12-year-olds who got in a fight with the little 12-year-old brother. And you're 16 years old and you show up with a gun and shoot a 12-year-old. My son is in the 6th grade. I couldn't imagine my son getting into a good old-fashioned fist fight on the playground or dispute and an 18-year-old showing up to the elementary to shoot a 12-year-old over a fight. That's what we become under the hegemony of black women. Stop lying. You were put in control after the civil rights movement. You were put in control after affirmative action. You were put in control after the welfare state. You, through the anti-family court and through the security state, going in and taking all of the black men who had some balls and throwing them in the feds, lumping them in together. Either you're a drug dealer or you're a domestic terrorist or you're a threat to national security. That was Hoover. We know what happened. We know how the Black Panthers got derailed. It wasn't because they were communists or socialists, and I don't agree with their communism or socialism, but they may have figured it out because above everything else, they were nationalists. They were nationalists. They talked about sovereignty, political independence, and power. We know what derailed them. The security state brought in cocaine. You got to go back to the history of cocaine to understand how this was promulgated on black women. You guys don't even take the time enough to read because you're too busy on TikTok. I'm telling you like it is. I don't want to have sex with you. I don't want to sleep with you. Look, I don't need to. You're going to like me one way or another. Let's just be honest. I'm 6'8" with green eyes and I got a 34 waist. You're going to like me regardless. I don't want you. I know what you'll do. I know what you do. Narcissistic, self-absorbed, the world revolves around you. And then when the man doesn't do what you want, you're on Instagram to your little tiny following of 700 people. Or let's say it's 7,000. Or let's say it's 7 million. Doesn't matter. You all act the same, talking about how the man's mistreated you and you're a victim of domestic abuse. We see the game. And then you think the next man's going to want you. Then you think you're going to attract the man that you want the next relationship. You're lying to yourself. I'm just trying to tell you the truth. I'm telling you the truth. You don't even know how it was promulgated on you. Cocaine, do you know how hard it was to get cocaine to New York City and to the metropolitan areas in the 1970s? Do you understand the process? This is pre-Pablo Escobar. They were making cocaine in Peru. It had to come through Nicaragua. Then it had to go through Cuba in order to even get to Miami, to even then get to New York City, let alone Chicago or Los Angeles. Who do you think had the capability to do that, the capacity to do that? The security state. We know who did it. Iran-Contra, the CIA. And Reagan can claim that he didn't know that the Iran-Contra thing was going on, and I'm fine with that. Maybe Reagan didn't know. Certainly, we see with Donald Trump that the security state has the audacity to operate outside the scope and the lens of the United States president, the commander-in-chief. And in that way, the security state is out of control, and we all know it. John Kennedy the same way. Many sitting presidents the same way. So yeah, we can't put all of the sins and the flaws and the misdoings of the security state on the president because they have no bounds. Their ambitions knows no bounds. The security state flooded cocaine into the major cities in the black communities. And how many black chemists do you know? Y'all are so silly about being black and trying to promote this black identity. You would rather take credit for coming up with the scientific chemical advancement of turning cocaine into crack than say where it really came from. The security state taught you how to make crack. Goofballs. The security state sent a chameleon in, sent a traitor in, sent an undercover in, sent an asset in. Might have been white, might have been black, might have been Spanish, might have been Jewish, might have been, who knows? They sent the people, they taught the people who taught you how to turn cocaine into crack. Crack flooded the streets. And then, we got a special law for crack versus powder cocaine. We got a little thing called RICO, and while we're here wrapping up the Italian mob, we're gonna round up all you black gangs and you low-level crack dealers too. And y'all thought it was a race thing. They really thought it was an attack on the black man. No, the black man that just served the agenda. The real agenda was to put the power of black communities, but communities writ large, in the hands of women by taking all the anti-establishment black men and other men out of the community. And what are you left with? You're left with a cuck, beta male, corporatocracy following set of men who run behind women who want to post selfies and twerk on TikTok. And I'm watching all of you. I'm seeing it. People always tell me, Patrick, they go, well, why don't you follow anybody? Are you arrogant? You don't follow anybody? You only follow one person on Instagram. You don't follow anybody on Twitter. Why don't you follow anybody? I don't want to know what y'all are doing all day. I'm seeing it. I don't have to follow you. I can go to the Explore page and see exactly what the algorithm's kicking out. And if this is a misrepresentation of black women, then you should go back to your technocrat overlords and protest that the algorithm is presenting you and showing you in that way. But you won't do that because you like the attention. You like being presented in that way. You like the corruption of that sexual lust, and then you want to say that men are being predatory, that men are sexually objectifying you. Stop voting for the political party that's tied to the technocratic overlords that kick the algorithms out that want to show all women twerking. That's how you've been represented, misrepresented, if you want to say that, okay. But they're not creating, I pray to God, maybe they are. AI is getting crazy, but they're not creating. I know you personally. I don't have to go into fairy tale land. I know you personally. I grew up with you. We came from the same neighborhood. We came from the same elementary schools. You was twerking in. There just wasn't no Instagram yet. This was in the 90s. We didn't even have PlayStation yet. We were still on Dreamcast. We were still on Sega, Nintendo. We were still playing GoldenEye with Oddjob and, come on. Nintendo 64. I know you personally. They're not misrepresenting you. They're doing what radical materialist corporatocracies do. They're answering the demand of a people who are corrupted in their will. That's what they're doing. They're playing the perfect middleman, a corrupt middleman. And yes, they don't have God in them either. There's a lack of faith. There's a crisis of faith. There's a crisis of moral clarity in them as well. But in relation to you, they are servicing as a middleman to your lack of moral clarity, your lack of faith, your crisis of faith. They're just playing the middleman for it. And then they're throwing it off on a fictitious white overlord that actually represents them. This is how good they are. The double cross and the triple cross. Yeah, hate white men, except us white men that run the Democrat Party or the neoliberal globalist establishment and make all the policies that keep you in the exact position you've always been in, black women. We're using you. And then you want to call black conservatives the tokens. I'm not telling you vote Republican or Democrat. Never once have I said vote Republican or Democrat. Vote America. Now, it just so happens that the place where the America First or the America, the national, the more national based political sentiment rose is on the Republican side. But we have no allegiance to the Republican Party. The Republican Party, the Republican establishment is our arch nemesis. And you parrot and you puppet this same narrative over and over and over again on the internet. I'm watching you, black women. Oh, Republicans. Oh, these Republicans are racist. Oh, you're dealing with people who are racist. Who's more racist you think than Bill Gates? And you all are following him, acting like you're not. You're following Bill Gates. The man said that we have a crisis of population growth in countries that can't sustain the growth. And he went to a list, and the list had all African and Arab countries. That's eugenics. It's right there in your face. You're not even paying attention. Following Bill and Melinda Gates. Y'all couldn't wait to take a grant from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You couldn't wait to do an internship at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or some connected NGO over there in Africa giving mosquito nets so you can take selfies in your bikini, in your swimsuit, on the beach, dancing to ethnic music. You couldn't wait and come back and give the praise and the thanks to Bill Gates, who is effectively and strategically and scientifically trying to eugenicize African and Arab populations. You couldn't wait. That's why Farrakhan and Malcolm X been calling y'all sellouts. And now I even see you turning on them. You won't do Malcolm yet. You know, y'all are careful around Malcolm, but you were quick to let him vilify Minister Louis Farrakhan. You were quick to let them to let the establishment, the white male technocrat establishment, ban Minister Louis Farrakhan. You couldn't wait. You could not wait. They kicked Minister Louis Farrakhan off the internet the same week that they kicked Alex Jones off the internet, and y'all couldn't wait. Wasn't a problem. There was no outrage. There wasn't no outrage as long as you could still get online and act like you're balling, act like you're getting to the bag, you know, dancing, twerking. As long as you could do that, who cares if Minister Louis Farrakhan's on? He's a little radical, a little too extreme. Right? And I'm not here to affirm and support every and anything that Minister Louis Farrakhan says. I don't support any and everything any man says or does. But what I do know is I do know the people who speak an uncomfortable truth that y'all just tend to reject so easily. You tend to watch these people be vilified and ostracized and blackballed and censored with great ease. Black women aren't a hegemony. You vote 91% Democrat. You're carrying water for white liberal women who are in league with white beta male cucks and technocrats. That's the truth. So I don't want to hear about white supremacy. I don't want to hear about white supremacy. I mean, it's getting old. It's getting to be ridiculous. And because I point out that there's a preponderance of black women sexually objectifying themselves on the internet, and not only sexually objectifying themselves, but coming together in a class seminar setting and selling sexual advice and then promoting it on the internet because I say that I'm in league with the white supremacists? Are you people stupid? Then I appreciate that our new subscribers allow me to go over the 90 minutes when I get going on some of these issues. And we'll try and keep it capped right around 2 hours. I don't want to go further than that. But man, the more and more we're getting into these issues, the more I'm having trouble staying within the 90 minutes. And I don't want to be talking all fast and then, trying to have you catch up. I want to talk to you like you're like a real conversation. So we're at 100 minutes now. I got to go another 20 minutes. I have to. If you don't like it, unsubscribe. If you want to, if you don't have time, I get it. You probably got to get back to TikTok. Then I had another person say, "Oh, what audience are you doing this for? You're criticizing black women? What audience are you doing that for? Do you think you'll be able to reach black people if you talk like this?" I don't care about reaching black people specifically under a false pretense or auspice. I'm not here to sing Kumbaya with black people just to be doing it. That's how we got here. That's why all your white liberal Marxist professors want you to cling to the "I have a dream" Martin Luther King speech, but never want to emphasize when he said that dream is turned into a nightmare right before they killed him. Same people. You guys actually think the Marxist movement is this genuine revolutionary movement. All of y'all are fake woke. I was out there with you. I was out there with you when the black woman told me clear as day, just to be a black woman is a revolution. That's the info war that's been played on you. That's the info war that's been played on black women by your Marxist professors and your Marxist educated talking heads and your Marxist educated community nonprofit activists. That's what's been waged on you. You've been made to accept and embrace a narcissistic, self-absorbed mentality where you think your very existence is revolutionary. It's not. Revolution is an action word. Revolution is an action word the same way leverage is an action word, and you have neither without action. And your action is to bolster the same federal government, the same tyrannical federal government that you say is inundated with an inherent white supremacy. Imagine that. Imagine saying all white men are racist except the ones that we choose to vote for. All white men are racist except Joe Biden, except Bill Clinton, except Pete Buttigieg, Pete Buttigieg, but not him. Who else? Gavin Newsom, not racist. Trudeau, not racist. No. These people tell me that black hair is pretty. They want Governor Tim Walz introduces the Crown Act into legislation so that all of your natural hair is protected in the workplace. Black women, you just keep being the revolution you are, black women. Just keep being the revolution you are, and we'll keep passing fluff, superficial, non-substantive policy into legislation to keep you at the head of the identity politics and cultural Marxist political train. The identity politics and cultural Marxist society bandwagon. We'll keep you on. We'll keep you on. And we'll keep you on. Oh, it's open 365 days a year, 7 days a week, no holidays. There are no holidays anymore. This amusement park, this merry-go-round is open all year long. Just tell me I'm lying. Feel free to drop it in the comments. Royce, you're telling a lie. The black woman is not being used as a cultural linchpin to forward Marxist politics, to forward a Marxist a worldview that advises everybody to opt into this super state, this welfare state. They're going to expand the welfare state to the global scale. And when you look back through the annals of history, it'll be the American black woman that paved the way, that laid the foundation for the welfare state to go to the global scale. Don't get me wrong, there are white women on welfare too. There are more white women on welfare probably than black women. But what about the narrative? Who is the narrative being waged upon? Oh, you black women, you have no man at home. You have no man at home. You have no family structure. You're an independent, strong black woman. If we, the white federal government, the white liberal federal government doesn't protect you, you will become a victim of radical white supremacy. The Donald Trumps of the world and the MAGA movement, the America Firsters, the Christian nationalists, the radical Christo-fascists will band together and roll from town to town, raping and pillaging and murdering black women at will. How many black women have been aborted in the womb? Who's got a better score in killing black women? Who's got a better score in killing black women? Oh, the black women in the womb aren't women. Oh, wow. How convenient. The most vulnerable black women amongst us aren't even considered human. That's how I know it's not about a women's movement. So when I see you fake, woke, cokehead, vegan puppets of the Democrat Party parroting all these talking points about cultural politics and cultural identity, I know that you're faking. So I have no problem coming before you and browbeating you, telling you like it is, because I don't want to have sex with you. Don't want to be nowhere near you. Keep your mouth shut long enough, I might be able to tolerate you. But as soon as you open your mouth and you start parroting this Rachel Maddow worldview, you're out. I don't want to be anywhere near you. And I mean that. I can stand on that. I don't care who you are, where you are, how pretty you are, how big your booty is, how big your breasts are, how good you look in a bikini, how many other men are on social media commenting, trying to, run after you, chase you. Doesn't matter to me. To me, I see a bunch of sellouts. To me, I see a bunch of black bourgeoisie sellouts. You're voting for Joe Biden. You're voting for Bill and Melinda Gates. You're voting for all these other white liberals who have a amazing score sheet in killing black women. And you won't even call them black women. You don't even got their back. They're just a clump of cells. Skip all the black men. Let's just take the black men that died in the womb out of the equation. Or, no, I know what you want to say. You want to say, because the child hasn't been born yet and hasn't been able to tell us what gender they identify with, they're actually not man or woman. They're just an identity-less clump of cells. Am I going too deep into the weeds here, Patrick? I mean, I don't want to be too deep, but this is really the prevailing cultural narrative. That if you take all the abortions here in America, 63 million since 1963, or 73, when your boy Nixon and Kissinger passed Roe v. Wade, under false pretenses. The pretenses of Roe v. Wade were false. Norma McCorvey, who's just Gloria Steinem, who's just Rachel Maddow. Norma McCorvey had to lie and say that she was raped to try and get an abortion. And she was the star. She was the person that Roe v. Wade was based around. And on her deathbed, she came out and said that she lied. And not only did she lied specifically for the political motive to get Roe v. Wade and abortion passed. White woman. A black woman that Roe v. Wade was based on. White woman. Y'all are continuously following white people, but want to talk about white supremacy. I can't honor that. It doesn't even line up. It doesn't square. Makes me question the whole narrative around white supremacy altogether. But I'm not dumb enough to do that because I know the real white supremacy is nestled behind the outer wall that y'all are protecting. And y'all think y'all can scare us real black folks into not talking about it because you're going to take our black car. You ain't going to invite us to the barbecue. Why would I want to eat barbecue with you poop butt crusty people? I don't want to share the same air as you or anybody like you, regardless of race, age, gender, doesn't matter. I don't want to be anywhere around you. That's that narcissism coming back into play, that groupthink. Oh, we're going to determine what black people can and can't say based on whether or not we as black Twitter or the online black social media community verify it. The shade room, pick one. Pick one. It's all the same bullshit. Bunch of radical consumer, gossip, drama, anti-God based bullshit. I've been talking like this for 10 years. Been watching y'all in the comments, or Royce White this, or Royce White that. And you know what? You know what you're really afraid of? The more and more people start to hear it, though. The more and more, see, the lies don't bear fruit. This is what makes God profound. This is what makes the story of Christ and the Abrahamic faith and faith in God profound. It's because the truth is always going to bear fruit in the end. Over the long game, you can tell a lie and hold the lie up as much as you want, but the truth bears the fruit. And what y'all are doing right now is scrambling. You're scrambling and getting desperate to try and hold up the lie. You're getting desperate with your white, liberal, anti-God, neoliberal, globalist, socialist, Marxist hegemonies, global governances. You're getting desperate and conspiring with them to try and hang on to the narrative. That's why Joy-Ann Reid is on MSNBC primetime telling you that Republicans invented the word inflation, or inflation is a Republican political tactic for black folks who don't know no better. But they're in charge of the Marxist universities. They're in charge of they're in charge of the school boards at the grassroots level. Think about, the Democrats and the liberals are in charge of the formative education of black folks. They run the school boards. They're the superintendents. So if young black men don't know the word inflation, who does that point to? Joy-Ann Reid's on the nightly news on primetime telling you that most black people, most voters, but she really means black men. Most black men wouldn't even know the word inflation unless Republicans taught it to them. Do black women know what the word inflation means? And if you do, then why are you voting 91% Democrat for a party that openly plans to expand the fiat currency and the inflation of currency? That's going to ultimately affect what you have to pay as a single mother in the store off the shelf. It's the most self-deprecating racket I think I've ever seen. It's actually the most self-deprecating, self-sabotaging racket that I could possibly imagine. I couldn't imagine one. If I sat down for 7 days straight, I could not write up a set of social circumstances that are so self-sabotaging than the one that our federal government and elites have working with black women, especially when it comes to politics. I couldn't come up with one. Fiction or not, like a fictitious one. I couldn't even write one up. If I wrote one up in the best case scenario, it would come close. It would come close to what black women have working with our elites today. But I can't say black women. I can't talk about black women or I'm hating them. So just let you run off the cliff, right? That's love. Set it free. If it's meant to be, it'll come back to you, right? Which is a faith-based phrase as well. But the contradiction is so deep. It keeps a sane person up at night. It really does. I can't believe the narrative that's been run on us. I can't believe it. It's hard to even comprehend once you see it. And it's not just the black women, because the white liberal women, white women, they're coming for you too. It's women. It's the feminization of society. It's the weaponization of women and the weaponization of the natural order and an anti-God sentiment being used to drive a wedge into families, to drive a wedge between men and women, but to really drive a wedge between human beings, mankind, and God. When you reject the natural order, you're driving a wedge in between humanity and God. And that was Karl Marx's original intent. And we can see that it exists now. When your identity, when your expression of your femininity, when your expression of your power and your political acumen or your political, knowledge of your cultural pride, when all of those things are anchored upon you being sexually objectified and killing your children, is that progress? Is that love? Is that hope? Is that you advancing? How have they tricked you into this? How have they tricked you into believing that all of your political power and your cultural identity, your blackness, your femininity is anchored on two fundamental choices: sexual objectification and the death of your children? I love when Chris Martenson said, this is a death cult. These people are not life affirming. You can't talk about human rights if you are not life affirming. The predicate of human rights, the predicate of human rights is that life itself is sanctified. The sanctity of life is the predicate of human rights. If you don't have sanctity of life, you have no claim or basis for human rights. This is basic. This is basic, fundamental, philosophical first principles, which you don't have. Because in all of the education and all of the advancement of equal opportunity and Title IX education for women, for some reason, the first principles are missing. You're getting pimped. You're getting pimped. All you did was trade a black man who was a pimp on the corner for a pimp in an ivory tower. Because I'm from the neighborhood, I can talk to you like that. I remember when the pimps wore the gaiters and the one slack in the one pocket slacks, and I was there. I know real pimps from the neighborhood to this day. I know them personally. I come from the neighborhood for real. All you did was trade. You let white liberals talk you into trading the local pimp, the local black man who was the pimp, for the pimp in an ivory tower. What's the greatest example? OnlyFans. OnlyFans. Economic sovereignty. Economic independence. Divine feminine energy. I got it going now today. Woo! Divine feminine energy. Going to get rich off of this. We're going to get rich off of my body. It's art. This is art. If men want to pay to watch me, that's my power. British man. British man started OnlyFans. You done walked 60 years and made this huge claim about white imperial British European colonialism only to be on OnlyFans shaking your ass for a British man. And you want me to follow you, and you want me to feel some type of pressure or some type of shame or embarrassment when Black Twitter has a problem with me calling out black women. Go pound sand. You follow these white liberal women all you want to. All you're going to do is find yourself in the gulags, being patted on the head and being turned into some circus freak blackface show. That's what's going to happen. Now, you keep voting Democrat if you want to, black women, but what we're starting on this side of the aisle is a movement of black men who know the truth, who see the truth, black men who are tired of the scam, black men who have gotten nothing out of the scam but shackles, but broken homes, but fathers who have been run out of the home, fathers who have been dragged through the same white anti-family court system. White supremacy, but you can't wait for a white judge to make a ruling on a case where your baby daddy got to pay more than he makes in order to stay out of jail. As soon as that happens, then Black Lives Matter goes out the window, right? For the same children that you want to fight for the right for the next woman to abort. There's no logic in it. There's no coherence. The movement lacks coherence, and that's a property of a divine feminine energy. This has been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy. I'm not going to take you any longer. I think we're right at 2 hours. Give me what is it? Where we at? 158. Woo. I hit the limit. I didn't want to go over 2 hours. This has been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio. I'm your host, Royce White, and I am here in Free People Radio, in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota, where late-term abortion is now legal. Emergency executive legislation. Governor Tim Walz, Amy Klobuchar, these people are going to protect you. They're going to protect you and your children and your rights. They're not going to let the white supremacists come and get you. This is ridiculous. We'll be back Wednesday with our normal news and updates show. We have a number of guests lined up this week, so many great guests that we may in fact add an extra episode this week to accommodate the great guests that we have. I'll be letting you know more about those guests on Wednesday night. I appreciate your viewership tonight and in the future. For all my black women out there, come home. Get off the train. It's headed nowhere. For all you white liberal women out there trying to brainwash us, we're not going. We're leaving the plantation. We're leaving the Democrat plantation. And for all you women out there who are patriots, who believe in God, who believe in having a country, who have long rejected this sort of radical feminist brainwashing, we thank you. We thank you. As from me and men like me, we thank you for your continued bravery and your ability to see through the bullshit. And we need you now more than ever. Minister to another woman. Minister to other women. We're going to need women to minister to fight against this neoliberal, Marxist, globalist, anti-God, technocratic hegemony. Thank you. The fight continues. Godspeed.